Hello everybody and welcome back to today's tutorial. So to get started on this beanie, I will be using a number 6 super bulky yarn, and for this tutorial I will just be using this Lion brand Wool Ease yarn. It's nice and thick and extremely chunky, so this beanie should work up super quick and fast. I'll also be using a 10.0 millimeter hook, and this yarn does call for an 11 millimeter hook, so if you do have a thicker, larger hook, feel free to size up and use that. And lastly, of course, I'll also be using a darning needle to help me weave in my ends. So let's go ahead and get started on this beanie. This Wool Ease yarn by Lion brand is 80% acrylic and 20% wool, so this type of yarn is going to keep you nice and cozy during these colder winter months. And to begin, like always, I will start off with my slip knot. And from here I can go ahead and insert my 10 millimeter hook. So to begin working on this beanie, I am going to start off with a chain of 24 plus 1 for turning corners. Alright, so I've just created my chain of 24. And now I'm going to go ahead and chain an extra 1 for turning corners because I will be using half double crochets for this pattern. So to begin row 1, I'm going to work 1 half double crochet in the second chain from the hook. So I'm going to skip that very first chain and insert my hook into this second chain. From there I can pull up a loop, and with 3 on my hook, yarn over and pull through all 3. And now you've just made your first half double crochet in the row. So for the rest of row 1, I'm just going to continue by placing 1 half double crochet into each chain in the row. Yarn over, find your next stitch, insert your hook, yarn over and pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through all 3 loops. And I love using super bulky yarn for these kinds of tutorials because you can really see my yarn and you can clearly see each of my stitches. So just carry on with row 1 by placing 1 half double crochet into each loop. And now I'm coming up here at the very end of my row. I'm finishing my last half double crochet, and now you have just worked your first row of the beanie. So to begin row 2, I'm going to chain 1 because I'm working with those half double crochet, and now you can go ahead and turn your work. To begin row 2, I'm going to be working in the back loop only for every single stitch. So for the first 17 stitches, I'm going to work a back loop only half double crochet. So I've already yarned over. I'm going to find the very first stitch in the row and insert my hook into the back loop. From there, I can go ahead, pull up a loop, and finish my half double crochet. And again, looking for my next stitch in the row, I'm going to go ahead and pick up this back loop only and work a half double crochet. And now I'm going to continue this for the next 15 stitches, so you should have a total of 17 half double crochet. Alright, so I've just worked up those first 17 stitches with a back loop only half double crochet, and now at this point you should only have 7 stitches remaining in your row. And for the remaining 7 stitches in your row, you're going to go ahead and work a back loop only slip stitch. So just like before, I'm going to insert my hook into the back loop only, except I'll be working with a simple slip stitch. So I'm going to insert my hook into that back loop, pull up a loop, and pull through. And that is my first slip stitch. Looking here again for my second slip stitch in the row, picking up that back loop only and slip stitching. And now you're just going to go ahead and repeat that for the remaining 5 stitches in your row. And now that I'm coming up here to the very last stitch in the row, you're going to go ahead and pick up both of those top loops just because we want the edge of our work to be nice and finished. And that is the end of row 2. And now for row 3, I'm going to repeat the same steps from row 1. I'm going to place 1 half double crochet into each stitch working through the back loops only. So to go ahead and show you guys row 3, I'm going to yarn over, find the very first stitch in my row, and work a half double crochet into the back loop only. Again, finding the next stitch in the row, insert into the back loop, and work a half double crochet. And for the rest of row 3, just continue to place 1 half double crochet into each stitch. And here at the end of row 3, I have 1 more stitch to place. So for this last stitch, I am just going to pick up both of those top loops. And again, this just helps to ensure that I will have a very straight edge. So at the end of row 3, you can go ahead, chain 1, and turn your work. To begin working row 4, I'm going to repeat the same steps that we have here from row 2. So for the first 17 stitches, I'm going to work a back loop only half double crochet. So just take your time and make sure that you're counting out your stitches correctly. Here is my 16th half double crochet, and 1 more for my 17th stitch. And again, now that we have 7 stitches in the row remaining, I'm going to go ahead and repeat those back loop only slip stitches. And to show you guys those slip stitches again, I'm going to pick up that back loop only, pick up a loop, and slip stitch. Again, finding that back loop only, pulling up a loop, and slip stitching. I have 2 stitches remaining. I'm going to back loop only, and then here for that very last stitch in the row, I'm just going to pick up both of those top loops and slip stitch the end of row 4. So far, this is what my work looks like with only 4 rows, alternating with those half double crochets and then the rows with the slip stitches here at the end. I just like this cute little technique of adding slip stitches on every other row because we're working with such a thick and chunky yarn. I don't want my beanie to be too large and obtrusive at the very top of my head, so I do like to thin down the very top of the work where we're going to cinch together the top of the beanie. So now that I've shown you the basis of this pattern, I'm going to continue alternating rows 1 and 2 until my beanie is long enough to wrap around my head. And then I'll hop back on here to show you guys how to finish up the rest of your beanie. Alright, so I'm back, and as you guys can see, I have worked up a ton more rows, repeating rows 1 and 2 back and forth for a total of 26 rows. And because I was using those shorter length stitches on all of my even rows, you guys can see here that my beanie does kind of take a little bit of a wider shape here at the bottom of the beanie, and here it is a little bit shorter in length at the very top, which is exactly what I wanted because, like I was mentioning earlier, I do want this beanie to have a little bit more of a tapered effect at the very top of our beanie. And now that I've alternated that pattern for 26 rows, it is time to stitch together my 2 short sides right here. And just a quick note right here, before I go ahead and stitch together my side seam right here, my 26th row does end up on the shorter side of my beanie. So because I want to sew up this long side and then also sew together the top of the beanie, I want to do this all in one final stretch. So I'm just going to go ahead, cut off my yarn here at my 26th row. So I've already gone ahead, cut off my yarn, and I'm just going to tie off a knot here at my 26th row so it's nice and completed. And now I'm actually going to head over to the tail from the very start of our work, and I'm actually just going to go ahead and join my new yarn to my existing tail. Alright, so I've just finished attaching my new yarn to my tail. So now I'm picking up from the very start of my work. I'm just going to go ahead, insert my hook into that very first stitch and pull up a loop, chain 1. And now at this point, I'm just going to slip stitch the 2 sides of my panel together. So I'm going to go right back into that very first stitch, and I'm going to pick up the back loop only on my other panel. And like I said, I'm just going to slip stitch up the side of my panel. So there's my very first slip stitch. Again, I'm going to pick up the 2nd stitch in my row, and likewise pick up the back loop only on the second stitch on the other panel. And slip stitch together. And just repeat this all the way up the side of your panel, making sure that you only pick up that back loop only. Alright, so now that I've just finished stitching up this side seam, I'm going to go ahead and leave an extremely long tail because, like I said, I am going to use this tail to sew together the very top of our beanie shut. So now to sew the very top of our beanie, I'm just going to go ahead and pull through that last loop and tie off a cute little knot here at the very start of our row. So now I'm just going to go ahead, grab my darning needle, and I'm going to weave or whip stitch all along the very top of this beanie, and I'm going to tie it off to our remaining tail here once I get to the very end of our row. So I've gone ahead and weaved this long tail through my darning needle, and now I'm just going to place my darning needle about 1 inch apart all along the very top of this beanie. So I'm just going to space it out by a few stitches and whip stitch all along this top edge here. And once I've added on about 3 or 4 of those whip stitches, I'm just going to tug on my loop and tighten up my knot as I go. So now I'm just weaving again through this top section, working about 1 inch apart at a time. And then again, go ahead and pull nice and tight. And now that I'm coming up here onto my very last stitch, I'm just going to pull it through, pull as tight as I can on the yarn without breaking it. And like I said, go ahead and tie off your long tail to your existing little tail here. So now the very top of our beanie has been all closed up, and because this is going to be the inside of my beanie, I can go ahead and cut my tails nice and short. And since I don't have any other tails here on the other edge of our beanie, I can go ahead, turn it inside out. So now that we're all finished, this is what the outside of our beanie looks like. And I can go ahead, flip up a cute little cuff here. And like I was talking about earlier, because I use those short length stitches on all of my even rows, I do have a beautiful tapered beanie here at the very top. So this beanie is going to be nice and fitted, and you shouldn't have any large puckering at the very top of your head. And now I have a very thick, cozy, and fitted beanie, perfect for these winter months.